Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. What's up with that? Why does this book have two titles? Who's Prometheus, and why is Frankenstein the modern version of it? So starting with the first question, who Prometheus is, we need to look at Greek mythology. And in essence, Prometheus stole fire, which is exclusive to the gods, and he brought that down to humans. And the gods, well, they didn't like that very much. They really didn't like that humans had fire. And so they punished Prometheus. They tied him to a rock, and an eagle would come every day to peck out his liver. But because he was mortal, it would grow back, he would heal, and it would happen again and again. A very cruel punishment. But why was it so severe? What was wrong with giving man fire? And so to understand that, we need to look at the symbology and the meaning behind fire. And to do that, we can look at its two primary functions, which are to give light and to give heat. So taking the heat aspect, the two main things that we're looking at is the ability of fire to create and to destroy. To destroy is obvious. A fire burns down a house, it destroys. Creation, a bit more subtle, but nothing too detached from reality. It's the ability to forge. If you know the story of Frankenstein, you will see how this imagery already relates to the story, that of creation and subsequent destruction. The second element of the element fire is that of giving light. And so again, we can think about the scenarios where fire would have been used as a torch to light a way, which is unknown, to guide you, but also the giving of light where we have a fire when out camping, or when we were predominantly living in hunter-gatherer societies, leading more nomadic lifestyles. Setting up camp, setting up a fire would have helped keep wild animals away, and so to protect those who were around the fire. The fire, due to its light-giving ability, was a centre of protection. And then we can look at light in a more abstract way, the ability to illuminate, to give knowledge. So the fire by itself did not distill any knowledge onto its bearers. However, the metaphorical aspect of giving light is alluding to knowledge. And so what Prometheus did fundamentally in regard to this aspect of fire is to give knowledge to the humans, give forbidden knowledge that the gods were willing to deny them. It's similar to the story of Genesis in the Bible, in Christianity. The giving of forbidden knowledge from the tree, and that caused a subsequent fall because it went against God's wishes. So we see this idea metaphorically of forbidden knowledge within the Prometheus story. So the fundamental aspects of fire that translate from Prometheus to the story of Frankenstein are the giving of knowledge, creation, and destruction. And those are the three aspects which are very important to keep in mind when reading Frankenstein and understanding why it is titled The Modern Prometheus. Frankenstein pursues forbidden knowledge, the ability to create life. He does so, he creates, and ultimately it is that creation which, going too far, leads to the destruction of everything that he values in his life. So there we see a very direct translation of this Prometheus story to Frankenstein. Being aware of those themes when reading Frankenstein can make it a lot easier to understand. I would also stress that looking into the meta story of Cain and Abel would make it a much easier book to understand as well, as fundamentally the characters of Victor Frankenstein and the creation form a Cain and Abel relationship, and we see how the story of Cain and Abel plays out within Frankenstein, most concretely in the targeting of what your perceived detractor loves the most. So in the Cain and Abel story, Cain is angry with God, and so he kills Abel, as that is who God loves the most. Whereas in Frankenstein, we see that the creation targets those that Victor Frankenstein loves the most. And those are the actions that he pursues to take his vengeance upon Frankenstein. So with the story of Prometheus, with the Cain and Abel story, Frankenstein starts to make a lot more sense. And we can also see the literary roots that led to Shelley's writing of Frankenstein. Historically, and looking at the time period when it was written, in the 19th century, we can also see how that pursuit of forbidden knowledge manifested in the creation of this book. It's very similar to what we're experiencing today with AI, and the wondering of, will that lead to our downfall? It's essentially a Frankenstein story. Are we playing God? Are we going too far with our pursuit of knowledge? And is there knowledge which is too dangerous for us to behold? That is a fundamental question asked by Frankenstein. It's a fundamental question that came up again and again in the biblical and mythological stories, where there is forbidden knowledge. There is knowledge which is deemed too dangerous for humans to have. And if they do have it, then it will make their lives much more miserable. The phrase ignorance is bliss certainly had its roots. I plan to do a more in-depth breakdown of Frankenstein, perhaps going part by part, so across the 3 volumes that it has. I think that it's a book worth talking about, and for me the books that are worth talking about are the ones which can hold some truth to our own lives, and can help us understand ourselves and the world around us. So I hope to produce that over the coming weeks and have it really as a dialogue, to have your input on it as well. The other book that I'm keen to do is Julius Caesar, the Shakespeare play. One, it's one of my favourite Shakespeare plays, but also it's a very interesting play in that Brutus is arguably the protagonist, but he kills his best friend, the titular character Julius Caesar, to serve his duty to Rome. It's a very interesting story, and has some excellent pieces of writing which are to be honest, worth unpacking. And aside from that, I'll see you in the next one.